If some magic sorcerer turned your head into a terrifying lizard, what would you do? You've been left for dead and have no memory of who you are, but you will have to battle sorcerers from hell in order to be able to solve your mystery. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the demons, the sorcerers, in Dorohedoro. This freak is going to go fight to the death against an entire realm of terrifying sorcerers. Kaiman here is a human who got his head magically turned into a lizard. At least that's what he thinks. Left for dead. He has no memory of who he is or what he used to look like. Teaming up with his best friend Nikaido, they both try to find the sorcerer responsible for turning him into a lizard face. And they go and interrogate these low-level sorcerers in a grisly street battle. And Kaiman is somehow immune to all magic and easily beats this sorcerer, who I'm gonna call Pinocchio. Grabbing his partner, he opens up his terrifying jaw and clamps his mouth around the sorcerer's entire skull. The man tries to escape but can't. But then he hears something and looks and sees a whole human head creeping up from inside Kaiman's throat. It's disgusting. And this throat goat guy crosses his eyes and stares into this sorcerer's soul. He's not the man that they're looking for. Kaiman takes the man out of his mouth and asks him what did the guy say, and he tells Kaiman what the man in his throat said, that he's not the one. Now useless to Kaiman, he kills this guy, but not before somehow this fat-nosed sorcerer sends his partner away through this magical door. With no more current leads, Kaiman and Nikaido decide to call it a day and head back into their city, the most dangerous city in the world. This place is used as a horrifying testing ground for sorcerers to test out their powers on humans, and in the wake of this aftermath, they leave behind thousands of corpses and disfigured humans in their wake. Whoa, this is nuts. This city centuries ago was discovered by a devil from another realm, and he basically began using this city as his magical playground to mess with humans, and used them for his terrifying experiments, using magical doors as portals to enter and exit this world from theirs. Kaiman wants to find out who turned his human head into a lizard, and thinks the stranger inside his mouth will be able to identify the sorcerer responsible, but this process of elimination is too slow and time-consuming. If I was Kaiman, I would work backwards and focusing on figuring out who I was as a person first by trying to identify our past habits. It's noted that this city is trashed to bits, all because of the visiting demons and sorcerers. This place is a literal hellhole, and everyone here lives in poverty, including us. While that sucks, the fact that we're poor could help us identify who we were before our lizard accident. Everyone in this city, including us, likely grew up in these poor conditions since this city has been this way for years. And did you know that exposure to poverty, especially when young, has been linked with alterations in people's cortisol levels and a reduction in the brain's hippocampus, a region in your noggin that is critical for regulating healthy stress responses. Which basically means that since everyone here grew up poor as all get out, there's a very good chance that their brain development came out a little wacky because of chronic stress. And it's likely that almost every human in this city has developed habits that they use to form as a sort of copingism for stress. And stress on average promotes exacerbating habits, which makes them harder to break, meaning that as Kaiman, I likely have hundreds of bad habits embedded within me that I've been doing for years and I didn't even know. So instead of hunting down the sorcerers, which is good, and I will do that eventually, I would work on figuring out what habits we naturally have and would begin chasing down any habit that we naturally feel in that moment. This means that, say if I craved a beer for example, I would begin going to different bars and begin to take note of how each bar made me feel, because it's likely that as a poor person who loves drinking and carries around all sorts of bad habits within me, it could be that before my memory loss, I might have gone to one bar more than the other, and have even ordered the same drink for years. By just asking around and going to places that I frequent, I might be able to learn a bit more about my past. It's slow, I will admit, but at the very least, we will be able to start to piece together a psychological profile of who I was before I lost my memory. Kaiman gets annoyed at himself for letting one of the sorcerers get away, but he doesn't realize that he'll soon be forced to battle against the most powerful sorcerers and demigods in the universe. The next day, he gets a part-time job at the city's hospital. Weird choice, but moving on. And it's a place where victims of magic can try to recover. He does his best to try and gather info from the patients here about any sorcerers that might know who turned his human head into a lizard. But today, there are no patients, so Kaiman leaves work early, deciding to hit up Nikaido's diner for some food. He walks in expecting dinner, but that's when he sees his best friend being transformed into a bug. This sorcerer tells Kaiman that he's almost done with his magical practice for the day, and he can have his friend back in a sec. Kaiman fiercely attacks this guy and overpowers him and puts him in his mouth. and he quickly figures out that this guy also can't help him figure out his identity, and he quickly kills him, and in doing so kills his 10th sorcerer in the human world, which is a number that he will soon regret that he just achieved. Back in the magical realm, a giant nose guy sorcerer reports back to the boss of this place called Mr. N. He reports that his partner recently got killed by the man with the lizard head named Kaiman, and he reveals that he was immune to all of their magic attacks. Mr. N is surprised, finding out that a human could ever be immune to magic, and he suspects that this Kaiman person must already have someone else's spell placed on top of him, and this would explain his strange lizard head and why their spells don't work on him. Impressed with Kaiman's magic protection, he asks Pinocchio over here to go find the sorcerer responsible for placing the lizard spell on Kaiman, and hands him a computer with a list of all the sorcerers in the world. He looks through it and recognizes one of the sorcerers that he passed by the other day, and quickly travels back to the human realm to find this person. The next day, Kaiman meets up with a now debugified Nikaido again, and they both go to pick up some photos. Since neither of them can see what the man inside Kaiman's mouth looks like, so they shoved a camera down Kaiman's throat in hopes that they'll be able to finally be able to see the mysterious throat guy. Picking up the images from the camera shop, they're about to look at the photos when they come across a sorcerer as they try to open a magical door but can't. Kaiman confronts this sorcerer and asks if he can shove this person down his throat real quick, just a quickie, resisting. Nikaido helps Kaiman, and they together manage to finally pull off this sorcerer's mask and discover that this terrifying sorcerer is a sweet, terrified little girl. Kaiman hesitates for a second, but says screw it and chomps down on her. The man inside Kaiman's throat comes up again and is about to reveal if this girl is the sorcerer responsible for his lizard spell, but out of nowhere Pinocchio appears again and pulls the little girl into his magical door, but in doing so accidentally rips her face off literally in the process. Now unable to ask this new sorcerer any questions, and with no results gathered from the photos, Kaiman gets sad and decides to drink the night away. Later, Mr. N calls his best sorcerer bounty hunters to meet him, Shin and Noi, and also Pinocchio, and this mysterious girl that he brought along, and he finds out her name is Ebisu, and they all have dinner together, and Mr. N gives them their next assignment. He tells them about Kaiman and Nikaido. Immune to magic, Kaiman has been killing too many sorcerers over the last 2 years, and now he must be stopped. Fortunately, Mr. N's best bounty hunters are a little bored with their easy bounties recently, so Mr. N tells Shin and Noi that this target might be their strongest one yet, and they get a little bit excited. He also makes Noi fix Ebisu's face, and she tells him that because of Ebisu's traumatic face accident earlier, she now has PTSD and a little bit of a memory loss problem, but it will come back in time. Mr. N tells them that her sorcerer file says that she knows lizard magic, so if she's not the one who did the spell, she might be able to identify the sorcerer responsible for putting a spell on Kaiman. So they take her along, and the sorcerer gang heads out to find and kill Kaiman and Nikaido. The next night, the city back in the human world prepares for its annual Night of the Living Dead festival, a night once a year where victims of magic rise from the dead due to all the magical pollution in the city. In exchange for the fun prizes, the citizens of the city all join in to stop these flesh-eating monsters. Kaiman, his boss, and Nikaido all join in to help her win a meat grinder prize for her restaurant. Midnight then finally rolls around. Sirens begin blasting as zombies begin rising. Everyone gets to work killing hordes of zombies all over the place, right as Mr. N's sorcerer squad finally shows up from the magical realm, and they've realized what they've just stepped into, and are forced to reluctantly join in on the fight. Meanwhile, Kaiman and Nikaido keep on kicking ass and taking names, but take a quick break. They're sipping on some sweet ramen when they finally get discovered by Mr. N's team. Pinocchio confirms Kaiman's identity for them in the distance, but then he can't help them anymore because Ebisu starts to get eaten by zombies, so he has to go save her. Nikaido spots Mr. N's team starting to go towards them and knows that these strangers are about to kill them. She tells Kaiman and the two get ready. Kaiman charges in thinking that this will be a piece of cake, but oh, it's not. Okay, we've just run into trouble with these guys, but Kaiman here could have predicted this. If I was him, I could have assumed that killing a bunch of sorcerers over time would have resulted in a bounty being placed on my head, especially since we as humans are the lowest level on the totem pole. And it goes in this order, folks: devil, sorcerer, human, and we're causing trouble for the higher-ups. Also, seeing the quality of masks that these sorcerers were wearing already could have told me that fighting these guys head-on might be a big mistake. Masks increase a sorcerer's power. The higher quality a mask, the stronger stronger their magic, which means that these guys were very likely strong. And on top of that, Shin here is cousins to Mr. N, which means killing as many sorcerers as Kaiman did, he should have already known who he was up against if he did his homework on what types of sorcerers were out there in the first place. Because I'm sure there's a black book out there in the underworld that you could buy to figure out who ranks at the top of the sorcerer world. And in getting this, it would have helped him figure out which sorcerer turned his head into a lizard, and also could have prepared him for moments like this against enemies that could legit kill him. In this case, brute force head-on is not the answer, but we could use the zombies around us as a good distraction. Being Kaiman here, I would tell Nikaido and this guy, wherever he is, to round up hordes of zombies first before leading them right to where Shin's gang is. In short, we'll have 3 people leading 3 different hordes of zombies from 3 different directions, which means Shin and his crew will be distracted, and this could give us the opportunity to sneak away. Or we could take this one step further and look for a gun while we're at it, allowing Nikaido and this guy with the tattoo to provide an overwatch for us, while we get up close and personal with these guys. The point is, these guys repeating their head-on tactics over and over again without changing it up a little bit is going to be a recipe for disaster. They're gonna get themselves killed eventually. They battle it out, but Kaiman quickly realizes that these guys are the strongest opponents he's ever fought. Nikaido gets beaten down to the ground as Kaiman gets stabbed in the head, going limp, causing Shin to lower his guard. Surprising the man, he chomps down on his head, and Shin sees the man inside of Kaiman's mouth, and he notices he has crosses painted over his eyes. He quickly announces that Shin isn't the one, just as Shin manages to sever Kaiman's head from the outside. Nikaido, still pretending to be dead, suddenly gets up and saves Kaiman, grabbing his severed head and his body, and she opens up a magical door, revealing to everyone that she is also a sorcerer too. The two escape, but Shin knows that Kaiman isn't dead, and realizes that in order to kill Kaiman, they need to find the sorcerer that cast that spell on him first. A few days later, Kaiman wakes back up at the hospital where he works and finds out that his head has magically grown back. His boss reveals to him that Nikaido is a sorcerer, but he laughs it off and says he's crazy and doesn't believe him. Later, Kaiman hits up Nikaido's restaurant when the boss shows up again with Kaiman's old head and has a crazy idea. He wants to dissect it in order to solve Kaiman's lizard head mystery, of course. Back at the hospital, Kaiman and crew get to work, but out of nowhere the power shuts off and Kaiman begins tripping balls and sees this stranger. The power then flashes back on, but they discover that Kaiman's severed head is now missing. They quickly check the cameras but only spot a shadow and realize that someone has stolen it. Now, with another dead end and his lizard mystery still not solved, Kaiman begins to lose hope. Meanwhile, back in the magic realm, Mr. N finds out more info from Shin about who he saw inside of Kaiman's mouth. He tells his boss that the man had crosses over his eyes. Mr. N then has an idea and takes everyone to visit a sorcerer friend of his. This sorcerer that has a literal turkey for a head. This sorcerer is known for making living dolls out of people. Once alive, these dolls will imitate the habits of the person they are based on. Shin then describes the person that he saw inside of Kaiman's mouth, and this guy brings the image in Shin's head to life. Mr. N takes a good look at the person, but doesn't recognize him, and neither does anyone else. The turkey-headed sorcerer then tells them that this doll will lead them to the real person with crosses on his eyes, as living dolls tend to head to where the original person is located. Soon they will find the man with crosses on his eyes, and it will allow them to find out who Kaiman really is. After that, Mr. N's gang follows the doll around town, and he leads them to a rundown apartment and into this room. Shin and Noi look around from the outside, while Pinocchio and Ebisu look around inside, and they discover this box. The doll suddenly freaks out and badly hurts these two. Shin and Noi then return and kick its ass. Shin picks up the mystery box and opens it up to find a rotting severed head inside. Noi then uses her magic on the head to restore it, and they find out that this is the real man with crosses on his eyes, the man inside of Kaiman's mouth. Later they meet back up with Mr. N, and he takes them to a special sorcerer party for corpse lovers. Here they wait for a famous sorcerer known for bringing people back from the dead. Mr. N says that this person will be able to bring the dead head they found back to life, and they also find out that Ebisu has been to this party before, but they don't know why. After waiting forever, the famous sorcerer finally arrives and shows off her powers, bringing this dead guy hanging from the ceiling back to life. Mr. N is impressed and wants to make this sorcerer his partner. He tells Shin and Noi that he's been looking for somebody that can control time, but he's never been able to find one. So finding a necromancer sorcerer who can bring back the dead will have to do. He orders them to abduct her and they head off. Ebisu then runs off into the bathroom, but then runs into somebody that knows her. Without her memory, she innocently accepts what the man gives her and tries some magic powder, an addictive substance that temporarily increases a sorcerer's powers. This activates Ebisu's power tenfold, and she accidentally kills this man instantly. Meanwhile, Shin and Noi find the sorcerer and kidnap her, killing her partner in the process. Mr. N comes in and realizes that this woman is using magic powder and is a fake. He quickly kills her and then discovers something hidden under the woman's dress and realizes that this is the real sorcerer that gives life this pig devil. Mr. N picks up the pig devil and tells the group that he couldn't find much info on Nikaido's sorcerer powers and doesn't know what type of magic she uses. But he tells them that with this pig devil, they'll be able to bring back the dead guy with crosses painted over his eyes back to life, and they will be able to find out more information. Back in the human city, some months pass by as Kaiman and Nikaido get word from his boss that he has a friend that might be able to help Kaiman solve his lizard face mystery. They pay a visit to the friend sorcerer who is just a kid, and this kid sorcerer tells him that he's recently created a magical door himself, the first magical door made by humans. Actual humans, not sorcerers, they don't count. And it's made from the flesh and bones of hundreds of sorcerers. This door will be able to take Kaiman and Nikaido into the magical realm where they'll be able to track down the sorcerer responsible for turning his human head into a lizard. Putting on this clever disguise to not get discovered, it's not that great, they head through the door. Now inside the magical realm, Kaiman plans to kill all the sorcerers here, one by one, as many as he needs in order to find his target. But the smart one, Nikaido, tells him that they need to keep a low profile and only kill in secret. Kaiman, my man, what are you doing? You are way too reckless. He's only gonna get himself killed. He isn't in the human realm anymore. This is the magical realm where sorcerers live and devils watch over it. And this means that Nikaido is right about the fact that we should be way more low-key than we ever were. If I was Kaiman, I would think critically about that situation, because shoving sorcerers in our mouth day one when we just got here is A, too time-consuming, and B, way too conspicuous. That is not low-key at all. I would try and instead not chomp down on the locals and instead befriend them. Go to a bar where alcohol would be flowing, get everyone's mouth loose, and there we could gain drunk friends and get some info on a variety of different sources around here. I would first try and find one who could draw realistic sketch portraits and test his skills in the bar first, get him a little buzzed, and then meet with him later in a secluded area, and then clamp down on him with my freaking lizard mouth. Because by finding someone who could draw semi-realistic portraits for us, we could be able to physically draw what the man in our mouth looks like. Isn't that a good idea? Think about it, because just looking for someone with crosses over their eyes as the sole clue to go off of is dumb as hell. I mean, look around you. All these people are freaks. They have tattoos and all sorts of weird things all over their face. We need more detail. And on top of that, a lot of these sorcerers are wearing masks regularly in public, which makes finding our mystery man that much harder. They then decide to head to the city center. Nikaido thinks that they should first look for the guy that Kaiman saw in the alley before his head got turned into a lizard. They hitch a ride on the Magic Carpet Express. Kaiman pulls a quick one, clamping his mouth over the taxi driver, finding out that this isn't the one, and he kills him while they're en route on the now dead wizard's magic carpet. And they steal his house keys and continue on. Meanwhile, back at Mr. N's headquarters, with the help of the pig devil, the severed head finally begins to come back to life and reveals to them his name. One of Mr. N's minions then tell him that they've discovered a gang of sorcerers with the same crosses on their eyes as this severed head. So Mr. N tells Shin and Noi to go track down this gang and their leader. Later in town, Kaiman and Nikaido continue to look for the man that Kaiman saw in the alley, but then he gets a little bit hungry, and they stop at this sorcerer restaurant for dinner. Nikaido then goes off to ask around for some more information about this magical city, but then bumps into this devil who hands her his business card. Back in the dining room, Kaiman then heads into the bathroom but suddenly passes out and sees a vision about the man in his mouth, with some of his memories coming back to him. He finally remembers the name of the man in his mouth. He wakes up moments later and runs back out to Nikaido, who tells Kaiman that she's just spotted another man leaving the restaurant with crosses over his eyes, just like Kaiman. They follow him down this road but lose his trail before he enters this building, just as Mr. N's guys pull up nearby and head inside the same building. Going into this room, Shin and Noi confront this mini gang leader and asks him where the real boss is, because they have some questions to ask. But this lower level gang leader respectably refuses to talk. So Shin and Noi brutally kill everyone here. A little while later, Kaiman and Nikaido finally catch up to their lost lead, discovering that all of these corpses corpses have tattoos over their eyes just like the man inside of Kaiman's throat. He tells Nikaido that his memory has started to come back and they need to find a guy from this gang named Risu. Kaiman and Nikaido then break into the cab driver's house from earlier and they stay in his house for the night. The next day, Nikaido tells Kaiman that they should split up and look for Risu because doing this will be much faster, and they decide that Kaiman will look around this part of town while Nikaido will go deeper into the city. She heads to this sorcerer pawn shop and sells some of her magic smoke to this guy. He tells her that this is some of the purest smoke that he's ever seen, and she notices another jar of smoke on the shelf that belongs to the same sorcerer she ran into earlier, Ebisu. She kills the pawnbroker and takes back her magic smoke, destroying any evidence of her powers before leaving with the cash to meet with an old friend, this devil. And he knows everyone in town, but she finds out from him that no one knows who cast the spell on Kaiman. Disappointed, she asks the location of a man named Risu, and the friendly tells her that he's currently located in Mr. N's fortress. She also finds out a little bit more info about the Cross Eyes group, and realizes that they are a disgraceful group of low-level sorcerers, unable to produce any magic, and she wonders how they are connected to Kaiman. The devil tells her that she could solve this mystery easily if she just used her sorcerer powers, but she refuses to do this due to some sort of troubled past and blah 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 blah, and I don't really care. Stealing Risu from Mr. N won't be easy, and he asks her why she's doing so much for Kaiman and if she's in love with him, and she says no, but probably is, and blah blah blah, again not important. And this jacked devil offers to make her a magical door directly connecting to Mr. N's mansion so she can sneak in, and she accepts his offer, preparing to go in and steal Risu. Okay, Nikaido here may think that she's the shit. That doesn't mean anything when she's up against people that are just as powerful, if not more powerful than her, or at the very least she seems to be very out of practice with her magic, which means going up against sorcerers that train regularly is dangerous as hell. If I was her, I would first look into finding out if there were other areas where we could intercept Risu instead, potentially kidnapping him during one of Mr. N's outings into town, or somewhere outside of his compound. Kidnapping him in the compound itself is way too risky, and will no doubt come across multiple security measures. Add to that, we don't even have any schematics of the base, or where Risu is exactly being held captive, and time is one thing that we don't have on our side. Once we get in, I would watch over Mr. N's headquarters from the outside and start to look for reoccurring patterns in his outings. Try to identify when and if kidnapping Risu outside of the base would ever be possible, and would only consider attacking the base as a last resort, because right now Nikaido's plan seems a little bit kinda I'm gonna figure this out on the go kind of plan, which is really not good. Meanwhile, back in Mr. N's headquarters, he equips Risu with a robotic Iron Man body powered by magic smoke, and they try to find out more information about who killed him, his gang, and why his face is in Kaiman's mouth. They also manage to bring back one of his gang members back to life, but Risu tells everyone that he still doesn't remember much from his past, but he also tells them that there are only a few people in his Cross Eyes gang who actually know what their leader looks like, and finding him will not be easy. Suddenly alarms go off, and they realize that Nikaido has infiltrated their headquarters. Shin and Noi go to stop her. They arrive and have a short battle, but Nikaido manages to slip away and continue to look for Risu. These two then realize that the magic door that she came from was made by a devil. Mr. N's minions tell them that Nikaido said that she was looking for a man named Risu and the Cross Eyes' boss. Back in Risu's locked room, Risu's blood and guts co-worker reveals something shocking and tells him that he and him were killed by one of the members from his own gang. Suddenly Mr. N and the gang quickly enter the room to check on Risu, telling him that shit's about to go south. But that's when Nikaido comes crashing in through this window and violently knocks over Mr. N. But this causes him to lose his shit, and he blows the whole room up with his mushroom magic, and Risu's partner is killed and everything goes to shit. Risu uses this opportunity to escape from Mr. N, and Nikaido is forced to retreat without Risu. She quickly runs back to meet with Kaiman, but she discovers that she has a giant mushroom growing on her back, thanks to Mr. N's magical explosion earlier. Shocked, Kaiman quickly takes her back to the human dimension and has his friends save her. Later, Kaiman's friend tells him that they recovered a devil business card in Nikaido's pocket and tells Kaiman that that must mean that she's a bona fide sorcerer. But Kaiman still doesn't believe him because he's an idiot. They then hear screams coming from Nikaido's room and discover that she's been kidnapped. Kaiman chases after him and comes across this hallway and realizes that this is the same hallway where he was transformed into a lizard. He follows Nikaido's screams down into this sewer tunnel but comes across this terrifying beetle. It attacks him and quickly overpowers him, forcing him to run like hell. He tracks the bad guy to this door. Blasting it open, he catches the bad guy and he tells Kaiman that he wanted to steal and sell parts of Nikaido, since sorcerer parts go for a lot of money. Nikaido easily overpowers him and chases out the beetle that followed him as well, about to die. The mystery man realizes that he's seen Kaiman before and saw him on that street when he was a full-on human. Desperate for answers, he asks the stranger if he saw who put the lizard spell on him, but the stranger dies before he can say anything. Alright Kaiman, you're a little bit slow on the uptake here. How has he up until this point not explored the alley that he was found in at all? That's a little dumb, because his reaction to discovering this sewer tells me that he never once looked around here, which is really foolish. Kaiman here has been trying to find answers to his lizard head mystery for over 2 years now, but upon the first time waking up, he never bothered to go back to where it all started. He could have found the answers to most of his questions if he acted a little bit sooner. DNA can last for as little as 4 hours or as long as a week on outside surfaces. If I was Kaiman, I would have gone back to where we were found the moment we got discharged from the hospital. I wouldn't have waited 2 years to explore it. If we had acted in the beginning and quickly, we could have looked for possible DNA within that area and could have either found out who else was present within the area at the time of our change. Now, because this hallway area looks to be pretty open, we're probably pressed on time and should have acted immediately, since DNA being exposed to the elements would have deteriorated the samples even faster than normal. This alley looks to be a part of a residential complex and means that any DNA found would, for the most part, have been from the residents of the building itself, or the total number of DNA samples found would not have been that high, since this walkway area isn't part of some main public sidewalk. It's not like we're trying to swab and track down everybody who walked through Shibuya Crossing. By relying on forensic science, even in a world full of magic, was a better step than what Kaiman was doing this whole time. The next day, back in the magical realm, Mr. N tells everyone that a smoke pawn shop that he owned recently got destroyed, but his team found 2 crazy things in there. They found traces of the sorcerer who can control time, and they found a smoke sample there left by Ebisu. Analyzing Ebisu's sample to figure out what magic she can do, one of Mr. N's minions finally arrives to tell them the results. But upon entering the room, the minion suddenly trips and drops Ebisu's smoke vial right onto Noi's face, turning her into a big fat giant lizard. Meanwhile, sad about Kaiman killing his own partner, Pinocchio guy goes off on his own adventure and goes solo to the human world and plans to kill Kaiman himself, and has Ebisu tagging along for no reason. Setting up human disguises, they begin to look for Kaiman, but they discover a sign-up sheet for a baseball tournament happening tonight and notice Kaiman's name on the sign-up sheet. This is how they'll kill him. They go to meet and sign up to join the opposing baseball team. That night, the baseball tournament kicks off, and Pinocchio prepares his plans for killing Kaiman, but notices something shocking: his old partner that Kaiman killed. But he's now a zombie, and he realizes that Kaiman's team is using his partner as an extra player for their team like a bunch of sickos. Pinocchio then changes his plans to kill Kaiman and works out how to bring back his zombie partner, knowing that Mr. N's gang will be able to save him with their magic. Seeing Nikaido go up to bat, he quickly sets up a distraction and uses his shitty magic, and he throws a super fastball right at her, but she manages to hit it and accidentally injures one of the players. Using this moment, Pinocchio grabs his zombie corpse partner and makes a run for it, with Ebisu following close behind, and they manage to escape back into the magical world. Nearby, Noi, now a giant lizard, creates havoc in the castle. Using all of his strength, Shin then manages to subdue Noi, but gets very injured in the process. So Mr. N then takes both of them down his secret lift to meet with another sorcerer of his and his #1 fan, this weirdo Chota. He's a sorcerer that has the power to cure another sorcerer's spells and then magically cures Noi. Meanwhile, Pinocchio's zombie partner begins to lose control and he mindlessly attacks Ebisu, which causes her to get pissed off, losing control of her powers, and she turns into a giant lizard and eats him. And now Pinocchio guy is horrified and realizes that the person who turned Kaiman into a lizard is Ebisu. After, she quickly transforms back into a little girl and reveals that her memories are starting to come back, finally. And they then meet with Mr. N and the gang, and they confirm Ebisu's powers, saying however though that her memories are not back 100%. Later, back in the human realm, Kaiman's memory begins to come back about his past, and he begins to suspect that the longer he stays in the magical realm, the more he'll start to remember. Not wanting for Nikaido to ever get hurt again, he secretly goes back to the magical realm to find Risu without her, finding out from some sorcerers that the gang that Risu is a part of have disappeared recently, but will probably show up to the 3-day festival.
festival starting tomorrow night. A festival where sorcerers can choose their new partners, and where Mr. N and his gang will be as well. Without money though, Kaiman waits out the festival in this alley, hungry and alone, but then notices some bad guys beating up this waiter kid. And the owner of this restaurant, Tamba, thanks him, offering him food and a place to stay, and even a job at his restaurant. The next night, the Sorcerer Festival begins, and Kaiman's co-workers leave the restaurant to go check it out, ordering Kaiman to go watch the shop. But of course, you know Kaiman, he doesn't listen and heads there too, knocking out these guards and nabbing a disguise. He manages to sneak in and starts looking for Risu. On stage nearby, Mr. N announces that the 3-day festival is about to begin and that everyone here can apply to become the partner to one of his members. Heading to the house of the sorcerer they want to partner up, they must sign the devil's contract and exchange a piece of their flesh with their partners. Midnight finally strikes, the festival starts, and the contestants go wild. However, after the announcement, Shin hears an explosion in a bathroom nearby and discovers that his partner Noi has now gone missing. Out of nowhere, he almost gets shot by sleeping darts and realizes that the people trying to kidnap them are a pair of dudes obsessed with making these two their partners because of, well, blah blah blah, it's not important. And Shin finally gets captured by them. Meanwhile, Kaiman's out looking for Risu and gets discovered by Tanba, and he is forced to come clean to them about why he's really here. They feel bad for Kaiman and give him some money for food, but then he bumps into this guy who makes Kaiman drop his food and pisses him off, and not realizes that this is an obsessed dude and is carrying Shin inside of his bag. But all Kaiman cares about is his food and tries to attack these guys, but gets knocked back. Kaiman's boss sees this and his restaurant gang team up to kill both of these guys, and they leave a sleeping Shin right inside of this bag. All the while, as Kaiman gives up hope of ever finding Risu, he then heads back to the restaurant. Okay, good. Kaiman here has finally found a new source of stable income and a place to stay. However, Kaiman trying to spot Risu in a city full of people is like trying to find Waldo in all of China. It's an all but impossible task. If I was Kaiman, I would instead work on getting into the mind of Risu. Based on what we know, Risu is a part of the Cross Eyes gang, but none of them have been spotted recently. But in order to fund their gang, it's likely that they are still receiving income through some business of theirs, such as selling drugs in the form of black smoke. And this means that we'll have a higher chance of finding Risu by finding his gang first, by using the smoke. Because in this world, it seems that they use black smoke as a form of currency, among other things. By tracing black smoke junkies to their smoke dealer, and following the dealer to their supplier, and so on and so forth, we will be able to figure out the chain of command and who works for the Cross Eyes gang. Because if we can get into the mind of Risu, it's likely that upon coming back to life, he would eventually try and locate his old gang, since the Cross Eyes gang is more than just a gang, it seems. They seem to have some sort of a way of life kind of a thing going on. Meanwhile, Risu finally arrives at the Sorcerer Festival, running out of smoke energy for his Iron Man suit. He tries to fill up his smoke power in this shop before he goes to find his ex-gang partner and best friend. But suddenly he runs into Noi, captured in this magic-proof box by those obsessed dudes. Freeing her, Noi quickly wakes up and unknowingly uses her magic on Risu, transforming his cyber body back into a human body. He quickly runs away before she notices, and now all normal, he heads off to find his ex-partner in order to find out who murdered him. The next day, Noi finally finds Shin sleeping inside of this body bag, while Mr. N finds some camera footage at his smoke pawn shop and finds out that Nikaido could be the sorcerer with the power to control time. Wanting to capture her immediately, he creates some voodoo doll and plants a mushroom inside of her back. This causes Nikaido back in the human world to suddenly cry out in pain, and a giant mushroom rapidly begins growing right out of her. As this happens, Nikaido's gang is horrified, and the giant mushroom monster bursts out of her back and quickly kills this guy, forcing the rest of the group to save Nikaido and hide in her room, knowing that they're about to die. Nikaido acts fast and goes into her attic to get her old mask, given to her years ago by her devil friend. This mask is able to enhance her sorcerer powers, and she finally breaks her rule and uses magic to swiftly kill this mushroom head monster. The group thinks it's over as their shoes get drenched in the monster's blood, but that's when the blood beneath them turns into a magical door, and everyone here is forcefully teleported right in front of Mr. N. He's about to begin his interrogation with Nikaido, but they get a visit from Chiraruma, the most powerful devil of all time and the ruler of hell. Mr. N is shocked since he never visits anyone, but Chiraruma says he wanted to give his business card to Nikaido because she's the most impressive sorcerer that he's ever seen, and he confirms that she can control time and says that no one in his devil network has ever heard of her. Knowing that she might be the most powerful sorcerer out there, Mr. N jumps at his chance and forcefully makes her his new partner. Quickly setting up this this new partner ritual. Shin and Noi happily renew their partnership, while En makes Nikaido swap her flesh with his, and the devil makes them sign it. And they both officially become partners, and Nikaido becomes even more obedient to Mr. N and makes her join this kid in this cage to use her for later. Elsewhere, Kaiman wakes up from a nightmare and goes out for a breather. Tanba joins him and confronts Kaiman about why he's really in the magical realm. Kaiman confesses, and Tanba then agrees to help him find Risu and reveals something big, telling him that one of his restaurant customers has crosses over his eyes, and tomorrow he has a delivery to this very customer. The next day, he and Kaiman go to see the man in question, discovering that this Cross-Eyes gang is about to be executed, and they are delivering his final meal. Kaiman wastes no time and puts a clamper over his big fat head, and inside of his mouth, Cross-Eyes guy sees Risu and is shocked. He recognizes him. He asks Kaiman if their Cross-Eyes boss sent them, and is about to reveal who their boss is, but gets executed and sent to hell before he can tell Kaiman. And out of nowhere, this devil, Nikaido's old friend, shows up and tells them that Nikaido is in the magical realm and is in danger. He then disappears, and Kaiman gets ready for his new mission to go save Nikaido first. Tanba then stops him for a sec and tells him that they have plans to go to Mr. N's castle tomorrow anyways to participate in the pie competition, and that Mr. N will be judging it himself. Meanwhile, back in Mr. N's headquarters, he brings Nikaido in to speak with the Devil King Chiraruma, and he tells Mr. N that her old sorcerer masks looks to be the work of someone he knows, and he knows that Nikaido must be friends with that devil. Later, Pinocchio sits and cries over his dead partner when he spots that sorcerer kid and his pet beetle on the run, realizing that they've escaped Mr. N's prison. He tries to make Ebisu stop them, but she fails spectacularly, and now the kid sorcerer has them dead to right. Suddenly, however, Shin and Noi come to rescue him, and they take down the kid sorcerer. But then Shin recognizes the kid, and he realizes that he was the doctor that saved him years ago when he was an orphan, and blah blah blah, it's really not important. Shin then tells everyone that no one can kill him or Pet Beetle, and they all become friends. They even bring back Kaiman's old human boss, and the kid tells them that they want to save Nikaido, but Shin tells them it's too dangerous and that they should just head back to their human dimension. But this kid manages to convince Shin and Noi to let him save his old friend, and it's all rather cute. Back in Mr. N's headquarters, Chota calls in Nikaido and makes her watch a documentary about Mr. N's life, starring Mr. N himself. He tells Nikaido that as his partner, she'll need to learn everything about him. Watching the documentary, she finds out more about Mr. N's life story. Years ago, someone began killing Mr. N's gang of sorcerers. Not even Shin and Noi could defeat him, and this man had crosses on his eyes. Mr. N went to try and stop him himself. Using his magic, he thought he killed this cross-eyed man, but afterwards he spotted that same man escaped through a magical door without his head, and he's never seen or heard from this guy again. Then the real Mr. N then enters the room and reveals to Nikaido that he needs her time-controlling powers to help him go back in time to the day he fought the mystery cross-eyed man, but to kill him this time for good. Nikaido deep down then realizes that this story sounds almost too familiar to how she met Kaiman. The next day, Kaiman's restaurant group finally sneaks into Mr. N's headquarters to set up their food stall for the competition, but then they spot a newspaper and sees Nikaido on the front page, realizing that she's now become Mr. N's partner. Kaiman becomes a little bit sad and thinks that she doesn't need saving, but that's when he spots her in the distance. Mr. N and his gang get busy judging the competition pies, so Kaiman uses this opportunity to try and save her. He tries to drag her away, but she resists and tells him that she wants to stay with Mr. N, but Kaiman tells her to come with him or else. Okay, I think we can establish that Kaiman rarely does any research on his enemy or their capabilities, because if he did, he could have figured out that a sorcerer forcibly partnering up with someone else meant that someone who did the forcing would have had the ability to greatly influence or exert control over that person, and would have known that Nikaido would never been able to escape with Kaiman anyways, and Kaiman would have also already known this because of the newspaper that he freaking saw earlier. Oh my gosh, he's an idiot. That would have told him that she was partnered up with Mr. N. Kaiman just doesn't pay attention. It's astounding how he misses all the clues. If I was a smart Kaiman, and knowing the obvious clues that we found, this could have helped us better prepare countermeasures, and we could have been a little bit more sneaky and have had a more secure opportunity to save Nikaido. Now, while we know for sure that she is a powerful sorcerer and she is pretty awesome, we've never really seen what type of magic she can do, which means we don't know how she could fight back if we did have to fight her. However, we know from observing other sorcerers that they aren't invincible, meaning they don't have any sort of spidey sense that we've come across so far, other than just trained battle instincts. So in a way, they are quite human, and they can be taken out or knocked out for a period of time if properly caught off guard. Knowing that Nikaido was partnered up as a sorcerer, we can now assume that she is going to use her powers on us or anybody everybody that Mr. N wants her to, which also means that before we try to kidnap her, I would have asked Big Brow Tamba if there was any sort of magic cage or box that we could have placed Nikaido in that would turn off her powers, which I think is a very realistic possibility because we are in a world full of magic, and the absurd is common as hell. And also, Noi was placed in something similar earlier, and by using this, instead of trying to politely drag Nikaido out, I would have just bashed her over the head and knocked her out, as this is already proven to work. Elsewhere, now with a human body, Risu returns to his old gang and gets assigned to deliver a package. He nearly gets killed, but that's when his friend saves him. He tells Risu to stop hanging out with his old gang, but Risu tells him that this gang is his only home, and he must deliver this package to the Cross Eyes gang headquarters. He thinks the boss will be there too, and there he'll be able to find out who killed him, but his buddy calls him an idiot for believing in their mysterious gang leader. Back at the pie competition, Nikaido tries to attack Kaiman, but he refuses to fight her, realizing that she's been brainwashed. So, Nikaido beats the shit out of him and throws him down this hole. Now very badly injured, Kaiman tries to hide from Nikaido like a coward, but someone else nearly kills her and sneaks away, and now about to die, her devil friend conveniently manages to arrive in the nick of time and manages to take out Mr. N's partner contract from inside of her body. Meanwhile, Chota hears all of this racket and swings by. Discovering Mr. N's contract, he begs them if he can have it so he can become Mr. N's partner like a creep. So the devil gives it to him, but tells him it doesn't really work that way, and in doing so saves Nikaido's life and temporarily freeing her. Her devil friend then asks her who tried to kill her just now, but she doesn't know, but realizes that he's still here somewhere. Her devil then reveals some more bad news and tells her that she must either kill Mr. N to void her partnership contract, or she must make Chiraruma cancel the contract himself, and tells her that if Mr. N sees her in person, the contract will reappear from inside of her body. So she must run away, somewhere far away, where Mr. N will never be able to rescue her or reach her, and possibly wait long enough for the next blue night. Kaiman then comes out of hiding and chomps down on Nikaido's head, and the man inside of his mouth tells her that she's not the one. Again, Nikaido is shocked at who she sees and tells Kaiman that the man inside of Kaiman's mouth is Risu himself. He is stunned and thinks that Risu might be the one who put the lizard spell on him. He finds out from Nikaido's devil friend where Risu is and tells him that he's on the outskirts of town in this village. But out of nowhere, Mr. N enters this area, and he's discovered that his partner is missing. He worryingly calls out to Nikaido, but very quickly the devil friend has a very wicked and naughty idea. He quickly transforms Chota into Nikaido's clone and sends a now very happy fake Nikaido to go back to Mr. N, while he goes to help the real Nikaido and Kaiman escape. They then arrive far away from the magical city realm. On the outskirts of town, they barely escape with their lives and freedom. The two camp at this rundown spot where they make plans on how to find Risu, finally solve Kaiman's lizard head mystery once and for all.
But what did you guys think about the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and as always, don't forget to check out our How to Be playlist.